this poor girl's going to starve to death just because you bought a cheaper, more efficient Maibatsu. Without gross symbols of excess, what will Americans have to look up to? Our great industries are threatened. Cars, pornography, armaments, and they need your help. So the next time you buy a car, a piece of adult literature, or a missile defense system, make sure you do the American thing.
Sorry, asshole!
Sometimes you just can't let go.
Max, you didn't eat your food. That's the second week in a row. Max?
When the unspeakable happens, just put your four-legged friend in the refrigerator or freezer. Then call Pet Stuffers. We'll be there within a week to pick him up, and in less than a month, he'll be back as good as new. Through an ancient Egyptian miracle process called taxidermy, you and your best friend will always be together.
Yeah, that's a good dog.
Pet Stuffers, when you just can't let go. And coming soon, grandparents forever.
The key to being great is looking great. What? Shoot! That's great. Sissy Sports Middle Club is sticking your head on the side. Heroes to you. Your hair is performing to the line. With Sissy Sports, it's hair for the future, not the past. When you have great hair, people know you're a winner.
This is Keisha. Welcome back to the show. I'm Amy Scheckenhausen, and next up, we're going to be interviewing someone with a lot to say for himself. Stupid cocksucker man, and then wrote a book about it. I haven't read it. I'm going to read it. She's professor of anthroposociology and women's studies at the University of Vice City, and her name is Michaela Kravis. Michaela. Hi, welcome to K-Chat.
Hello.
Hi. So, Michaela, you're a teacher.
If you mean professor, yes, I have a doctorate. Teachers are homely women who make minimum wage to keep the teenage boys off the streets during the day. I am very intelligent, and I'd rather talk about that. I'm trying to sell my book.
Okay. Now it says here you wanted to be a man so much, you dressed up like one.
Well, that's a little crap, my dear. More importantly, it's propaganda. I hate men. Can't bear
How's filming going, Steve?
Well, Candy is a natural. And that new girl, she's insatiable. She went through half the cast and crew before I even took a light reading. Anyway, hey, tomorrow we're going on location to shoot the boat scenes.
Boat scenes? What boat scenes?
The fishermen are in the throes of passion when a giant shark comes in.
What'd I say about the giant shark? I said, no giant shark, all right? Just keep the cameras pointed at the poontang.
Okay. Hey, Tommy, you guys gotta try, right?
Get those flyers printed up.
Yeah, but nobody's gonna let us distribute those things. I mean, they're just too, they're unimaginative.
You don't worry about that. I've got my own ideas for distribution.
Okay. Hey, Candy, in my trailer. I feel like we're revolutionary.
I got a visa, mate. I got a visa. You can't touch me. I'm bona fide. I love animals. Leave me the hell alone, or I'll come by your aquarium and fix the bloody shark shit. No good. By the book, paper pushing murderer. I would have lived if you let me in a tank. I could have cheered him up. I could have done. Now stay away from me, you hear? No more calls, K.A. Phones are so personal. Not a two-way conversation on the radio.
Okay. Who is that?
Wrong number, I think.
No, who was it?
Yeah, it was. Bloody wrong number. He wanted a plumber and a Chinese. I was speaking to an Australian.
Okay, cool. What was it about
Nothing, babe. Oh, it was a long time ago. Look, I've got a little surprise for you. It's a little playground. See how relaxed she is with me? I've got special powers. She's a lot like a little Joey kangaroo in a lot of ways. You know what I mean, love?
What did you say?
I've also brought a menacing trouser snake. Would you like to see it? Look at this. It's a little frog in my pocket. Calm as you like, not even awake. Eyes, guys. Anyway, in this pocket, I've got a baby dwarf giraffe I birthed this morning. See, she's still puzzling through it from her mum's womb. Wow, isn't that fabulous?
Ooh, that's grody. What did they make you say at the mental health judge?
Nothing, babe. Nothing at all. Long time ago, it was a bad period in my life. I wasn't sleeping. I was heartbroken like a platypus. Do you know a platypus only gets a fill after its mate breaks its heart by sleeping with its brother? I know all about that. I was crying my eyes out for weeks on all kinds of pills for my nerves. Couldn't move, couldn't talk. I was chewing like a dove. Please, darling, let's move on. Do you want me to talk to you?
Now I'm really curious. What did they make you say? You do? I never knew.
They made me say I love you.
Oh, I made my boyfriend say it, and he slept with my best friend. I think we're bonding now.
No, we ain't bonding your heart. We're falling apart. I hate you. They made me say I love you to Bobo.
Who is Bobo?
Bobo was the most beautiful creature that was ever on the earth. Ever at all. Really beautiful.
Who is she?
He.
Hey, he.
He was an orphan, and I loved him, and I knew him properly. You'd never understand. It's natural. We were identical from a genetical perspective. Bobo was really unhappy, putting on a show every day like a circus animal. They thought they could be doing something, but they never did. They never did. We were only cuddling. How can people take that the wrong way? They took me away, they locked me up, and Bobo died of a broken heart.
That's awful. But, ooh, just a second, you sick bastard! Security!
I loved him more than you can imagine.
Call the police! Someone, please!
Good, but
This guy is molting!
and it'll also text you.
Gross.
Yeah, you text also text.
I'm fine. Me and my friends are traveling around in a black van and solving crime.
His phone did not buzz off. You said that text. Why is phone?
Stay away from me! I got a poisonous lizard in my food. He'll kill you in 2 seconds. Please, you can prove it. You're not.
When I go back and think about console launches, it's hard to imagine any more hype leading up to a launch than the Sony PlayStation 2. The Nintendo 64 is certainly up there, with its silicon graphics in the living room and bringing the arcade to the home on the Nintendo Ultra 64 nonsense, but the
The Force Awakens. The Disney corporate fanfic. Luke Skywalker has vanished, and his absence as the sinister First Order has risen from the ashes of the Empire and will not rest until Skywalker the Last Jedi has been destroyed. The support of the Republic, General Leia Organa, leads a brave resistance. She is desperate to find her brother Luke and gain his help in restoring peace and justice in the galaxy. Leia sent her most daring pilot on a rescue mission to Jakku, where an old ally has discovered a clue to Luke's whereabouts.
This will begin to make things right.
General's been after this for a long time.
That's weird.
We got company.
You guys know that. Well, yeah, I should put all that. The spring home.
Who gave you permission to remove that helmet?
I'm sorry, Captain.
Pew 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 pew.
So I'm guessing the close at the beginning is so much to where so this guy right, so FN right there. Let's just state that I guess the close at the beginning so much difference where that's how you know that they've been cloning so much is that their clones are so much more different than that of the Clone Wars. Yeah, for what person said about Shadow Blade, I would have to emulate that. So far, I don't have that. So far, when it comes to that one thing, it is unknown of how exactly I'm going to get there. Like, and today my job coach said, there's no appointment date because it seems like I have to schedule the appointment. But of course, I would have to know of how or who can get me to the very place. Like I was scheduled already today if I could get there with just Uber like regular Uber can get me there, but not with the vouchers. Because the place, I guess, does not go by the very, paced routes.
carefully. If you do exactly as I say, I can get you out of here.
What?
This is a rescue. I'm helping you escape.
Why are you helping? Because it's the right thing to do. We need a pilot. I need a pilot.
Can you fly a TIE fighter?
I can fly anything.
Good. We're heading to the hangar. Where do you think you're going? Look at you on prisoner duty. Nice. The hangar's there. Hey, 2187. Good to see you. Wait, this is a server room.
Is that bad?
We can disable the alarm system from here.
That's good.
Bet you never thought we'd be pushing buttons on the finalizer, huh? Big time button pushing boys now. Hey, why do they call it the finalizer anyway? Because it's the final thing the enemy sees. Pew pew! Sweet.
So it's smooth sailing from here, right?
Not quite, but at least they can't call for backup.
breathing our way through. We need to lighten up.
Why do I feel down or bad about it when yet I had nothing wrong dealt with when I heard about
Enemy
this?
attacking you.
What?
Enemy attacking you.
That TIE fighter over there.
So how are we playing this?
I only planned as far as getting to a TIE fighter.
Okay, we can do this and live. I think.
And hopefully the way Jordan knows that's not my fault, but I can't exactly get it up to sound very nice. Honestly, it's like, what was that? Next week or day that week?
Probably not.
Well, like I said, I have to use funds from doing other things to get a film something instead, because so far, it's on, like, maybe it's a good thing I said when I left the end, like, when I was in the place, that was so far, I'm so far shooting a few or so weeks. And yeah, the second thing is that I checked according to Google, the very fingerprint place at the corner with Bigford, at the very place, is only open 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekdays, no weekends. If we were a weekend, it'd be easy. No.
Don't let them get to a ship! They're trying to escape!
Hey, what's your name?
FN2187.
Finn, huh? Finn. I'm gonna call you Finn. That all right?
I like that. Once we disconnect these cables, we're out of here.
First, we're going back to Jakku. Left like droids out there.
No! We can't go back to Jakku!
That droid's got a map that leads straight to Luke Skywalker.
Skywalker?
I guess FN doesn't even know about the legendary Jedi. The very Jedi that their forces suppress. It may move, but it doesn't really have much shielding.
That's not good.
Yeah, TIE fighters sadly don't exactly have a kind of shielding. That's how come they were easily shot down.
Don't give up hope. He still might show up, whoever it is you're waiting for. I'll take you to Nemo, but there's something I need to take care of first.
Thank you for saying that, but still wish others will come in. I don't know they're working, but definitely thanks for coming in.
This too, that was something else. When it released in 2000, it took the world by storm. It promised the future of video games. Many of us saw the power of what the PlayStation 2 could do thanks to the many tech demos that we saw in 1999. These demos all ran in real time, and the thing that really stood out for me was the graphics and fidelity was a massive step up from the PlayStation 1. In fact, its leap represents the single highest graphical jump from any one console generation to another. The PS2 was the total package, right down to the futuristic boot-up startup sequence and the distinct purple hue color of its discs. And the hardware supported DVDs for both games and movies. And of course, it was fully backward
First things
compatible
first,
with
you're gonna help
PlayStation
me
1
get some
games.
scrap.
But at the top of the
Uncuffed
PlayStation
getting
2
more
hype
and more
train
selective
was the new
train.
custom chip, dubbed Emotion Engine. This chip was found inside every PS2 and is the heart of the system. And even if you are not someone who's technically minded, the chances are you've probably heard the name Emotion Engine before. And this is because Sony marketed the Emotion Engine in such a way that made you feel like you were stepping into a whole new world. A true next generation of gaming hardware that went beyond traditional computing. And for developers, the Emotion Engine boasted the ability to accurately model all manner of physics and world systems. All of a sudden, things like procedural world generation, realistic facial features, water effects, hair simulations, soft shadows were all possible thanks to the brand new Emotion Engine chip. This technology was able to make games more realistic and varied, and this level of performance in real time is what Sony calls it emotion synthesis. This single chip would be responsible for this push to realistic 3D worlds, better physics, and simulations. However, for all this to be achievable at its core, the Emotion Engine is not one chip. It actually combines a MIPS CPU clocked at 294 MHz with two very important additional coprocessors and various other controller chips, memory, and interfaces. In short, extracting the very best out of the Emotion Engine required all these systems to be running in parallel with little to no stalling. And it also required a very skilled programmer. Sony would market the Emotion Engine with the implication that they had something that the competition didn't. The Sega Dreamcast was initially the PS2's main rival, and then the Microsoft Xbox, Nintendo GameCube would arrive a year later in 2001. But many were left feeling disappointed at the launch of the PS2. Sure, there were some good games here. My personal favorite was Tekken Tag Team. Others would enjoy games like SSX and of course Ridge Racer 5. But the main issue here was the games initially didn't seem to be any better than what we saw on the Dreamcast. In fact, many would say they were worse. The Dreamcast was a true games console, with many games being at arcade perfection or near it. And of course, we have to talk about Shenmue. In 1999, the action-adventure title featured environmental details, numerous interactive objects, a full day and night system, variable weather effects, NPC characters, and a really awesome assortment of Sega arcade minigames. And people would start to question Sony's reputation and marketing around the Emotion Engine. Can it really do anything that the Dreamcast hasn't already done before it? And what about the up-and-coming GameCube and Xbox hardware launches? Was it a case of Sony overhyping the hardware just to sell more consoles? Or was the Emotion Engine a real thing that could do everything that it was advertised to do? The answer is yes, but getting to that stage would take some blood, sweat, and tears. At this point, it's easy to write off the PS2 as the weakest of all the 6th generation consoles, but I think that this is subjective, and in the right hands, the PlayStation 2 could outperform any other console at the time. When Sony launched the PS2 in 2000, the first year was developers mostly coming to terms with the hardware. This would be a paradigm shift in how traditional computation development was done. In order to take advantage of the PS2, the developer needed to think differently. Think in parallel, running many tasks at once, streaming data around the bus, and minimizing stalls. The PS2 was designed to be remarkably efficient at handling some pretty complex tasks without relying on traditional methods of data processing. We said earlier that the Emotion Engine was a single chip on the surface, but inside it had additional coprocessors, and these coprocessors would be the key to untapping the massive performance that the PS2 could offer. While the main chip ran MIPS at its core, the secret weapon of the Emotion Engine were the two coprocessor vector units VU0 and VU1. These vector units, while similar, had different tasks. VU0, for example, would handle geometry transformations, matrix and vector-based calculations, including setting up projections and multiplications. Due to its simmed parallel processing, it was a much better option than the traditional CPU. VU1 was designed to run independently and in parallel from the main CPU, and it handles 3D vertex processing and lighting. And by taking advantage of both vector units in this fashion, with fast optimized code, it's possible for the vector units to generate up to 66 million polygons per second. And if you apply fog and lighting, this number is halved to about 36 million. But according to the Micro Design Report from 1999, this was still around 16 times faster than a Pentium 3 at 500 MHz. The main job of the Emotion Engine was to take all the graphics data needed to render a frame, known as display lists, and pass them to the GS, or the graphic synthesizer chip, which in turn handles the rendering. The GS chip has an insanely fast fill rate of about 1.2 gigapixels per second, and the vector units in turn represented an early look of what we would consider to be vertex shaders in modern times. But to keep these vector units fed required some precision, and the PlayStation 2 Emotion Engine had arguably the most important chip, known as the DMA controller, or DMAC, which offered developers a smart way to move data to the GS with 3 different pathways to get there. So for example, during code execution, the vector unit could be generating vertex data while at the same time texture data could be sent to the VRAM via the DMAC. This could all be done at the same time to maximize the PS2's bandwidth. One of the more interesting demos that I remember was known as V-Universe. The objective here was to create a graphically interesting demo using only the 16 kilobytes of program memory and the 16 kilobytes of data memory of the PlayStation 2's VU1 vector processing chip. And this is the result. It's quite remarkable. Sony would frequently host competitions to see what developers could do with only the use of the VU1 chip. And some of these demos are amazing. By late 2001, developers started to get more experience in understanding the Emotion Engine architecture and really started to show off the power of the PlayStation 2. And there are a few interesting examples of how developers took advantage of them. The first is Silent Hill 2, arguably the very best game in the series. It took the original PS1 version, which used fog to not only create the suspense and the mood for the game, but more importantly, used it to hide technical issues.
This is what I was having premiere earlier. Please check out the Johnson premiere with YouTube will allow you. I was just double checking something.
Textures and took advantage of the vector units and the high fill rate to create one of the most unique fog layers that's instantly recognized if you're a survival horror game fan. It also featured dynamic real-time lighting and soft shadows, and these features sound pretty trivial in today's age of consoles. But the PS2 at the time was the only system really capable of pulling off these effects. The original Xbox port of Silent Hill 2, while it is a port and very good, the fog effect has been reduced. It's simply just not the same. And if you side by side this in comparison, if you stand in the same spot, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And while the original Xbox had a more powerful GPU and a faster overall raw performance, porting some of these VU effects to DirectX 8, which was the supported version at the time on the original Xboxes, meant that some sacrifices had to be made. Silent Hill 3 is a clear step up in visuals from its predecessor, and it absolutely shows. Textures have been improved significantly, and many believe that Silent Hill 3 is one of the best looking PlayStation 2 games on the hardware. And I'm not one to disagree, it's a technical masterpiece. Polygon counts were increased over the original, but what's striking about Silent Hill 3 is its improved texture resolution. Take for example this model of Douglas. It uses around 8700 polygons and detailed textures, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Not only this, many effects in the game were done years before programmable shaders were standard, and this was all thanks to the power of the Emotion Engine's vector units. For example, check out this early implementation of bump mapping. As the light source hits the floor, you can see that the shadows accurately reflect off the ground tiles. As Heather moves around, what is actually happening here is that the ground geometry is drawn twice, with the second pass slightly offsetting the ground texture from the direction of the light source. Then a blending pass is done to subtract color from the frame buffer to pull off this very realistic effect. Because the PlayStation 2's graphics synthesizer has such an insane fill rate, developers took advantage of this, and the PlayStation 2 holds the record for the most number of games that target 60 frames per second. God of War 2 is another technical showcase of the PlayStation 2's Emotion Engine. It released late in the PlayStation 2's lifecycle, and Santa Monica Studio were locked in on how to get the very best out of the hardware. Its silky smooth gameplay coupled with high-resolution texture work, with many enemies and particles on screen at once, running at a locked 60 frames per second, was not a fluke. But how does a game manage to look so good and never drop a single frame? The game uses a fixed camera system that moves on a rail depending on where you are in the level, which means that it focuses on only what's on screen at all times and streaming in predefined geometry data as Kratos moves around the level, and the effect works incredibly well. But the vector units weren't only used for particle and interesting post-processing effects either. Because the PlayStation 2 only had a small amount of VRAM, developers were challenged to innovate in how games could be designed. Streaming data in real time would now be possible. Traditionally, level data is loaded in statically and fit within the bounds of system memory of VRAM. Developers had to make sacrifices to load in as much data as possible and separating gameplay using loading screens, which would unload old level data and bring in new level data as needed. But thanks to the powerful DMAC chip, streaming technology in several PlayStation 2 games were considered groundbreaking at the time. For me, personally, I remember the first time I played GTA 3 on the PS2. Graphically, it didn't look particularly amazing. That would come later with San Andreas. But one thing that was apparent was that Rockstar knew how to program the PlayStation 2. The entire overland map of Los Santos is streamed in real time, taking full advantage of the vector units with no loading. Jak and Daxter, the Precursor's Legacy, is a title that's often credited as the first, or at least one of the very first games to have no loading. And this is entirely true. If you play the game from start to finish, you will never experience a single loading screen. Once you've unlocked the entire game, you can run from the very start of Sentinel Beach right until the final stage, at the Citadel, without a single loading screen inside. Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the earliest games I remember that completely blew me away in its presentation. It was a clear generational leap in technology from the PS1 game, and again, thanks to the high fill rate of the hardware, meant that we saw some incredible, for the time, real-time cutscenes and effects. The entire game was a cinematic showcase, featuring real-time dynamic and self-shadows, and of course the rain effect on the tanker level is one of the most notoriously difficult things to replicate on anything other than original PS2 hardware, at least for many years. On the PS2, the effect is effortlessly rendering at 60 frames per second. On the Xbox port of MGS2, with an even more powerful GPU, it simply can't keep up, and the frame rate is reduced to 30 FPS. Metal Gear Solid 2 also features some impressive motion blur and depth of field, alpha-blended textures, reflections, and even a physics system. And the game is all about interactivity, and it eclipsed what any other game was capable of doing at the time. One of the games that perhaps went beyond what was considered possible on the PlayStation 2, undoubtedly, is Shadow of the Colossus. The game brought some new rendering techniques to the PS2, including simulated high dynamic lighting, realistic fur simulation, smooth animations. The horse animation, for example, is very realistic and lifelike. The game also comes with two different motion blur systems, both on the scenery itself and as well as the character when it's performing its animation. There's also a very nice soft shadow implementation in the game, but of course the Colossi fur effect is possibly one of the most unique rendering techniques on the PlayStation 2. At a high level, it's combining 6 or more multiple texture layers with similar texture geometry duplicated multiple times to give off the effect. The game uses clever use of alpha blending and vertex lighting to simulate the color of the fur. Now, if you want a deep dive on how the fur rendering was done in the game in more detail, I will leave a link to Lena Piquet's excellent technical background in the description below. Shadow of the Colossus also features a very interesting level of detail implementation that would bring in new geometry as the world got closer.
Well, but still, I see what you said there, Ryan.
Once again, the game features a
it's all due to just like so far people point the finger at only one person that is possibly behind what got 7 through 9 ruined.
Too much and suffering in its performance, but the game to me never feels unplayable. Shadow of the Colossus is a true masterpiece and a swan song for the PS2 itself.
For some, they possibly think that episode 7 is okay, but at the same time, but then again, like they kind of messed up on Rey's background. Like if they made her like the offspring of a Skywalker instead of what they did do, then
was an amazing solution to solve big problems at the time, increasing the number of polygons on screen to create realistic environments and characters. And the PlayStation 2 wouldn't have been the same without it. It's the soul of the hardware, and while it wasn't perfect, its lack of anti-aliasing, for example, is one of the main drawbacks. It brought games to a new generation. and while the Xbox and GameCube were on paper more powerful than the PlayStation 2, the hardware really shined when the experiences were built exclusively for the PS2. So with that all said, was the Emotion engine overhyped? Definitely not. Once developers knew how to program on it and after a slow start, it would truly be a next generation breakthrough. The problem is, there's just more than one way to get the job done. The Xbox used brute force to often eclipse the PS2 in terms of performance. It didn't have vector units, but it did have a fast CPU, GPU, and a built-in hard drive for fast streaming, for example. But let me know your thoughts about the PlayStation 2 and the Emotion engine hype in the comments below. And let me know if there was a game that I didn't cover in this episode that comes to mind being something that blew you away back in the day. Of course, there are many more examples that I haven't covered in this episode, but I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. But we are going to leave it here for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like it, please don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.
Yeah, here's the thing though. That very thing that they just helped rise off the ground, like, it gives me a question if they should just try to get onto the thing while it took off. Garbage it is! Well, the Millennium Array was kind of needing tons of help back when it was more used. And no, it's not a garbage ship, it's the Millennium Falcon. Oh.